Good afternoon and welcome to the closing panel of the 2020 Autism Hope Summit. We hope you've enjoyed a day full of learning and virtual connections today. Now I'm happy to introduce our closing panel entitled Advocate, Educate, Innovate, a dialogue with self-advocates. This afternoon's panel will be moderated by Dr. Stephen Shore, an internationally renowned educator, consultant, author, and self-advocate. Thank you, Stephen.
Well, thank you. And it's been a pleasure spending the day with you, giving a couple presentations, the opening keynote, and then a talk on developing effective skills in self-advocacy and disclosure. And now we wrap up our day together with a panel of people on the autism spectrum. We've got Shaina Cillimberg, Hank Selzer, and Thomas Wolfe with us. And we will learn more about autism from the experts on autism. And that is those of us who live it every day. And now we will move on to the panel members discussing who they are, an introduction to yourself, and issues that are important to you. And we'll spend about 5 minutes each doing that. And let us go in alphabetical order. Let's start out with Shaina, then we'll move on to Hank, and then on to Thomas. So Shaina, all you have to do is unmute yourself and you're ready to go.
Hi, I am Shaina. I do artwork and I like to look at art. I go to art events and like music events. I also go to church and I like to go to coffee shops and the park, and I want to talk about the things that are important to me as a person with special needs.
All right, Shaina, that was a great introduction. Is there one thing that you would like to tell us that's really that we all need to know in just a couple of minutes?
Well, I'm gonna answer the questions that are asked. You mean answer the questions or just an introduction?
It's just part of your introduction. We're going to get to the questions after the introductions.
Okay. I currently live in the phase-on residence and am part of a phase-on residential program, but would like to one day live where, I still be safe and still have staff as needed, but it's not like a program, but a more, I guess, independent situation where you don't have to be with staff as much.
All right, well, that sounds like a great goal. Wanting to increase one's independence, but at the same time realizing that all of us, autistic or otherwise, do depend on other people for certain things. All right, Shaina, thanks for a great introduction to yourself. And now we know a little bit about you. We are now going to move on to Hank. I see that Hank has unmuted himself, so that means he's ready to go.
Hi, I'm Hank. I'm Hank Selzer. I am a 30-year-old autistic young adult, and I live at the family partner wing of the Phase-In program, and I'm currently going to school at J. Sargent Reynolds Community College, and I'm really excited to be on this panel today to advocate and educate people on what it means to be autistic.
All right, that's great. And it's great that you're here to educate us, educate everybody as to what it's like to be autistic. And what we'll find is that there are many ways to be autistic. There's great diversity in the autism spectrum, as we're already seeing. And now we're going to move on to Thomas Wolfe for his introduction.
Okay. Hi, my name is Thomas. I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm 26 years old, almost 27. My birthday is December 5th. And so I attended the University of St. Francis here in Fort Wayne, where I got my bachelor's degree in political science and history with an emphasis in education. I just this past year, I finished my master's degree in organizational leadership with emphasis in higher education, which I'm really excited about. And I'm currently about to be enrolled in a certificate program which focuses in helping people on the autistic spectrum in post-secondary settings at Ball State University, which I'm looking forward to as well. And I hope to eventually get another master's which focuses in education so I can progress my career further. So I look forward to that. I'm currently still living at home, but I too am looking forward to living an independent life, which I hope to achieve in the next year or two. So I really like, playing guitar, like watching TV, going running. So that's that. And I just always like making the most of opportunities I get because, every time I've missed an opportunity to make something of myself, I have regretted it. So I really want to take that into perspective with everything I do from here on out. And I really look forward to seeing what the next year brings. So thank you.
All right, well, Thomas, thank you very much. And I think you are giving us a great example of grabbing opportunities when they come. Opportunities don't always come at convenient times, and sometimes it doesn't seem like it's the right time for them. But I like your idea of grabbing the opportunity when it does occur. All right, so now we're going to move on to the questions, and we'll talk about school services. And let's take a look at question number 2. And question number 2 there is, what do you think has had the biggest impact on your success in life? With that in mind, what are the most important interventions we can focus on, us educators can focus on, to best support students on the autism spectrum? And do I have any volunteers? Who wants to be first with this, to answer this question? All right, Hank. All right, Hank, you're still muted. So if you turn off your mute, then we'll be able to hear you. All right, you've turned it off.
I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to all this new technology. Bear with me.
We all are getting used to it.
I would say that the biggest success in my schooling life, in my education world, has been getting the opportunity and the practice to advocate for myself whenever I needed anything. My mom and dad, really, I couldn't have picked two better parents, because what they did is whenever I had an issue in school, they would, instead of dealing with it with my teachers, they would make me advocate for myself, and they would make me come up with my own answers. And oftentimes that was painful growing up, because I was like, I want to be taken care of. But at the same time, I realize now that that was a great big success for me.
All right, Hank, you bring up a very important point, and that is advocacy, effective self-advocacy. The nation's public schools are tasked with educating our youth to live productive lives. And part of that is also to advocate. And it's great that you have parents who understood that and encouraged you to advocate, to be involved in your own education. And one way that I've seen advocacy being taught in schools is involving students in their own educational plan, in their own IEPs. Because in these educational plan meetings, that is where we see the language of advocacy taking place, as various people around the table advocate for the student, and the student should be there too, advocating for themselves. Because the more we learn about advocacy in grade school, the better we'll be at advocating for ourselves after graduation, and when we need supports from the Americans with Disabilities, say at the university level or at work, and we're going to have to advocate for ourselves. Nobody's going to help us. We got to do it on our own. All right, Hank, that's a great answer. Does anybody else want to answer this question? Or shall we move to another question? Let's move to another question. We're still in school services. So let's grab the last one. And the last one is, what have been some of the most helpful tools, resources, and services you have received? So in other words, where and how have you received your best support? And let's see, let's go with either Thomas or with Shaina.
I'll answer something.
Okay, Thomas, you're on.
Okay, so, well, let's see. I mean, I did go to a private school. So, I mean, being a private school, it is smaller and it doesn't have quite as many resources on campus as maybe a public university did. But for what size it was, I am thankful that I took advantage of what it did have to offer. I mean, it did have, some, student support services, which wasn't specifically geared towards people with certain abilities or anything like that, but it was aimed at helping students, who needed help. I mean, whether it was with course material or with finding good strategies as which to approach their daily schedules. And so I'm thankful that, especially in the latter years of my college days, that I took advantage of that, sought help from some volunteers who worked at the Student Support Services Center, where, they give you advice of like how to organize your schedule, how to prioritize your goals and that kind of stuff. So, and I really found that was really a good motivator, because, it gives you both the assistance that you feel you need to have the influence you need to get your work done, but it also feels like it gives you the freedom to have the motivation to do things at your own initiative. So that was a really good motivator for me. And I'm glad that I learned the value of that at the university, because I feel that's something that you can take wherever you go to work. So that was one thing that I had at St. Francis.
That's that response. And I think what Thomas is teaching us is that we need to take advantage of supports that are out there. We need to look for them and we need to use them. And there's every good reason to use these supports, because what they do is they give us a hand up. They're not a handout, but they're a hand up, or a support that will enable us, that will empower us to be successful both in school and then what you learned from those support services in areas such as perhaps organization, you can carry on with you in future areas of study and employment as well. All right, that's a good one. Good answer. All right, let's take one more from this school services area. Let's take the question, where do you feel like service providers miss the mark when trying to serve autistic people? And Shaina, you beat me to it. So all you have to do is unmute yourself and you're on.
I really good. Okay. Sorry, I had to. My legs were a little crampy or stiff. I have to do this now. But anyway, so mine is like I try to talk with my guidance counselor about college, because I worked really hard in school. I wanted to make sure I went to a good college, and I could go on and on about how tragic my life is. But anyway, she did not get back to me, but she told my parents she didn't think I was mature enough to go to college. And so, like that, that irritating. Also, they both, I guess family and educators didn't really listen to what my goals for my life were. It kept being more about, what is a make a good income, that I, it's all basically all that, instead of focusing on asking me on what I am interested in doing, and for colleges and school goes and stuff like that, and kind of, it's just stuff like that. Or when I had a speech therapist who asked me why my hair was covering my ears because I'm hearing impaired. I just walked away from. So after I left my first meeting with that speech therapist, I just felt like my brain cells just went down. Well, duh. Most people's hair, majority of females' hair covers their ears, and some males even. I was trying to tell her that that's why. She's like, well, it's popular for guys to have long hair too, but they can't at a job. I'm like, but there are plenty of women at jobs and men with hair covering their ears, so that was kind of weird. Maybe my it's just I don't know. There's so many better things to focus on, I guess, than how your client's wearing their hair when you're meeting with them. It's just odd.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the person, they weren't being person-centered.
No.
If college is important to someone,
Yeah.
There are many strategies in which to enable us to go to college.
Yeah.
There's entire books written about this stuff.
Yeah. In the college, yeah.
There
College,
is,
what I did like was a guidance person there when I was letting my grandma talk for me said, "Are you going to always let your grandma talk for you?" Like, I really like that.
yeah, I bet.
Yeah, like, I just think that, like, cause, in the high school, even middle school, whatever, like, you don't really get to talk enough for yourself. Like, even in ISP meetings, it's mostly people talking about you, what and this is ISP meeting, independent living support means not even school, but people are talking about you, what you need. You don't get to talk enough about yourself or speak up for yourself when someone is saying something. You just don't. It's more about them than you, even though like Faison claims to be person-centered, it's still more about them than you. Like if it's about you, you can do more talking. But yeah.
Yeah, Shaina, I think that's a great theme that ties together all of your comments. It's not about the therapist. It's not about the teacher. It's about the autistic person you are supporting.
Right.
And if that person wants to do something, let's try every means possible to make that happen, whether it's going to college, whether it's listening to the person's goals, whether it's the hair covering your ears. Yes, it's very common for women and guys too to have their hair cover their ears. Now the question is hair tends to be very light. And I wonder just how much having hair over one's ears interferes with hearing. I'm not a hearing specialist, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
it doesn't.
But I think
I've covered my ears when I've heard like babies screaming and crying, and it still doesn't help that, unfortunately.
yeah,
I mean, I love babies, I love kids, but I
right,
don't hear that.
right. And you
Like,
can also very easily do exactly what I saw you do.
yeah,
And that is you went like this and you moved your hair away from your ears for a moment. And then when you're done listening, you let the hair fall back. It's a matter of choosing your battles. And that definitely is not a battle that needed to be fought. All right,
now
so
I'm like wearing headphones all the time. That would be,
yeah, that would be something else.
yeah, like I know there are people like who need noise canceling headphones, but I don't need noise canceling headphones. So,
Mhm.
because I'm hearing impaired, so I probably need the opposite. So, yeah, it
All right,
is.
all right. Let's
Staff like to work,
let's move along.
and she's knocking on my door.
Mhm.
My apartment was dead silent, and I still did not hear her.
Ah,
So
well, we
she
need
just,
to find another way to let you know that somebody is
yeah,
there.
she does texting, yeah, but some other staff go harder.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah.
That's good. All right, let's move on to perspectives. Uh, perspectives. Your perspective of being an autistic person, or is it a person with autism? So on that note, let's take a look at the question about person first or identity first language. Course for teachers. Let's take, for example, the autism course I teach for teachers. Should I use person first or identity first language in the curriculum? Who wants to grab this one?
I'll go with this one.
All right, Hank, you're on.
At first, my answer to this question has evolved over the years. At first, my answer was that, of course, everyone should use patient first language because the patient is the more important. But the more I thought about it, and I think this is one of the questions for down the line if we get to it, the more I thought about it, I actually really, in the years since I've been diagnosed, decades now, I really have come to like and appreciate my autism for the gifts it gives me rather than just seeing the negative side of it. And so I think now that I much prefer the term, autistic person or autistic young adult rather than person with autism because of the beautiful gifts that autism has given me, like different perspectives on life.
All right. So, well, yeah, a lot of autistic people feel that way. Not everyone, but a lot of us do. Shaina, do you prefer a person or identity first language?
I think it can go either way. I'm very I'm not into PC culture, and I think that as a person with autism, the fact the world is getting more and more and more PC, the newest thing that's rude, it's this, that, and the other, and cancel culture, it's very stressful for me to have to deal with. You already have to learn social skills to adapt in a typically developing world. There's just no way we can keep up with, oh, that's rude, that's rude, that's rude, or no, you're supposed to say this instead. We can't say anything anymore, basically, because it can be very frustrating. So yeah, I would say just either way. I mean, as long as you're not using it as an insult,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, that's just something different, when you referring to a group of people online being foolish as autistic. That I don't like that, clearly,
All
but
right,
if
yeah,
you
that makes sense.
yeah, but
Yeah,
if you're like, oh, my sister is autistic, okay, cool.
yeah,
Something
yeah,
completely
and it
different.
is cool. All
Yeah.
right, let's move on to Thomas. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I always like, people when people recognize me for what they observe from, based on my, my actions and my decisions. I mean, I guess, I always like it when people, recognize me for, what I say and what skills I seem to have. I mean, whether or not they realize that, I'm on the spectrum or not. I mean, it could be a good thing. It could not be, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't usually think about it that much, because I feel that people recognize me for, what I do and what I've managed to accomplish, and so I think some of the, I really have really close attention to details, which I guess is a characteristic of, my condition, so I mean, and I'm glad that people recognize that when they see it. I just to me, it doesn't make a much difference when they, whether or not they know I have Asperger's or not. So I guess I'm more for the individual, for me as a person, maybe. I guess.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So uh, we've got three different people and three different answers, and that's just an example of the diversity that we see within the autism spectrum. All right, let's take a look at another question. What do you think are the most important topics for autism research to focus on right now? That one. Thomas, do you want to grab it?
Sure. Well, let's see. I mean, it's kind of hard to know exactly, but I think it's good to see. I think it's good, important that researchers, just come up with multiple examples, multiple samples of individuals, because as you just said, I mean, three different people, three different answers, I think it's important, look at the diversity, the neurodiversity that goes on among, people all over the spectrum, because, no two individuals are the same, no two individuals share the same perspective, so I think it's important to look at, multiple people's, perspectives, multiple situations, multiple personalities and all that stuff, because, we all have our own interpretations, some of it might be some of it's because we're on the spectrum, some of it's just because of our personalities. So, I mean, I think it's important, do some research and, think about, what distinguishes all of us, people who share this characteristic of being on the spectrum, but also what makes us all different, from one another. So, because I think there's a lot that can be learned from that. So, and that's something I would definitely like to look into someday myself. So, yeah, hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, you did bring up something very important, and that is within the autism spectrum, there's an incredible amount of diversity. There may even be more diversity within the autism spectrum than outside of the spectrum, which brings to mind what I often say, in that when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. However, we have common characteristics that bind us all together. And that is, we have differences in communication. Now, I don't want to call it deficit, but it's a difference. Differences in communication. We interact differently socially. We often see sensory issues, and we tend to have deep interests. And something I'd like to see research focus more on is looking at these characteristics as possible strengths. What can we do to work with these characteristics as opposed to against them to promote strengths and abilities of autistic individuals? So that brings us to the question at the bottom of perspectives. What skill or gift have you cultivated due to being on autism spectrum? Or what is one skill or gift that you've cultivated due to being autistic? So who wants to tell us about a skill that they've cultivated? Hank, I can see a hand, so.
Yes, I addressed this in my previous answer, so I think I should be the first and say, I think autism has given me many, in addition to the negativity, which I will admit is there around different topics regarding autism. I also like to think autism has given me several gifts that I can't imagine doing without, such as a different perspective on the world. I find that I'm more open-minded because I can relate to people in a different way that neurotypical people can. And then I also find that I just love having a cause to get behind. I love being able to explain to people, like we're doing now, what autism is and how it's affecting me.
All right, that's some great examples. Having a cause, autism in this case. I know many autistic people who do the same exact thing, and I know many autistic people who get behind other causes and they throw their whole being behind their cause, and they do a lot of good. Greta Thunberg comes to mind. She's probably the most well-known person on the spectrum for having a cause, and that is addressing warming. Many gifts do come with autism, but as Hank so rightly mentioned, there are challenges that we have to address. They're definitely there, they're real, and we do have to remediate for them. However, at the same time, realizing that we tend to have a widely varying skill set, and that being, sure, there's challenges and they can be significant, but there also can be some really significant strengths that go on with that go with being autistic. Does anybody else want to talk about gifts that autism has given you?
I'll throw in something real quick.
All right, Thomas.
Okay, so I mean, one thing I like to do is here in Fort Wayne, I haven't been able to do much recently because of the pandemic, but we have our local Fort Wayne Dance Collective here, which is just a small dance company, for people who just wish to dance various kinds of dances, just for fun, just for recreation, and that's something I've really enjoyed doing the past few years. And I mean, we haven't had any performance lately, but I've had several performances doing it with that. And I mean, I used to get a little bit of stage fright during like the recitals and that kind of stuff. But one thing I've really discovered about myself is that might be because of of what the gifts I have. I feel that I become less nervous whenever I get on the stage because I just think about it's more about me performing and impressing myself than it is about worrying about how other people perceive me when they see me on stage. So it's just given me a whole different way of looking at performances I do, which makes me feel more proud about it, for what I've done, So yeah, and I think that's a really important skill, like thing you do.
Yeah. All right. So dancing.
Yeah.
I know other autistic people who are really good at dancing and other physical type activities. I know one person who's won regional and national awards in gymnastics, and she's autistic. One thing that autism provides for her is that she's the type of autistic person who likes to spin in circles and she doesn't get dizzy. It is impossible to make her dizzy. And that can come in very helpful when you're doing all kinds of flips and various other things that you do when you're a gymnast.
That's cool.
Getting dizzy.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, so we've heard from about skills. We've heard from Hank, we've heard Thomas, and I'm wondering about Shaina, if there's anything you'd like to talk about in terms of autism giving you a gift.
I don't know if autism has made me better at anything or not. I don't look at it like as my superpower because I'm like tired all the time and I'm like really bad at like math and stuff. Like the stereotype, like we're gonna be like really good at math, and I'm not good at math. I cannot get through college math. Like that is I don't know. I mean, I guess my art, but I don't even know then because I just feel like my mind just goes blank too much. For me to like call anything a gift, like I don't know why. It's just I guess maybe because I also have ADHD. Maybe that's why. But I don't know. I have like multiple diagnoses and I have autism, I have ADHD, I have OCD, and then physical disabilities. So I wish I could say that it like makes me good at things, but I don't really know.
All right, well, that's a valuable answer too, because again, what this shows us is the great diversity that we find within the autism spectrum. And as time goes on, and you have more experiences, then you'll find something that really grabs your interest and something that you want to focus on, and that can become an area of strength.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially with the way this year has gone. This year, it's just like this crazy year has just like almost killed everything.
Oh, yeah, it has been a crazy year. It's going to continue to be, and
Yeah.
it'll probably be crazy next year too.
I'm not ready for that.
Well, let's just get through this one first.
Hopefully.
All right, let's move on. We've talked about schools and services. We've talked about perspectives. And let's take a look at advice. And there's a number of questions here that we have for advice. And let's take a look at, let's see, there's so many good things here. All right, here's one. What would be the best advice you would give to professors of students with ASD?
Student, my advice to students is, so I got diagnosed at 16, so I didn't really realize that everything, like I tried to turn in, like I would work hard on, and it turned out to be not what the teacher was looking for. So I decided, when I was in community college, that if I had to work on a work on a paper, that what I was going to do was I was going to email it to my professor ahead of time and say, hey, it's what you're looking for, and just to make sure that I get it done correctly. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I kind of wish I understood more about my disabilities and what they meant, when I was younger and, under college age. I'm beginning to like understand them somewhere in my 20s, maybe like my early to mid 20s, like just starting to understand like what my different disabilities meant. No, I mean, like it's complicated. I think that they should try to. I think that other people with autism, students with autism, should try to well, I don't know, just reading up on it back then, it wasn't as much information, I guess. They should just try to get in tune with, okay, so what is this experience like for them, and go off on that instead of like what other people say the autism experiences, and that it's nothing to be ashamed of, and that that basically, it's nothing that well, because something goes wrong, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong, so, or if like someone is irritated with you, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong, even if they try to tell you. I think that you should, I get to take things with a grain of salt. Like, I know, so like as a Christian, I know I went to youth group, and like, the youth speakers, I don't know what religious background you all may have, but and then just to 2000, early 2000, late 2000 was a weird time for Christianity, and like all these people would come to youth conferences with these like really dramatic testimonies, and it kind of that I would say, feel don't feel as if your testimony has to be dramatic Like there's, and I guess maybe this doesn't even, I mean, and I guess for whatever your religious background is, you could take it to any aspect of your life, you know, like if someone is talking about, you know, how they overcame alcoholism, you know, that doesn't mean that whatever your story is any less because you're not an alcoholic, you know, and it's basically like that. I mean, there were people, you know, in youth groups who got it that they shouldn't do that because that just it might fall on the wrong ears. But yeah, but anyway, yeah, I mean, I get that, you know, but that could be any instance in life fall on the wrong ears too. Like if you guys would have ever had teenagers and started talking to them, you know, about crazy stuff, they might get the wrong idea. Or if you ever like, I don't know, or even if you, or I don't know, just any teenager you interact with, you know, if you start like talking about crazy stuff to them, they're going to get the wrong idea. Just don't, you know, like, yeah, just don't do that. You know.
All right, so you bring up a lot of important points, and points that us professors can use as intelligence. You might say you wish that professors better understood, had a greater understanding of disability.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
Professors.
that around.
They
Yeah.
should,
So
yeah.
us professors need to learn more.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
they.
right.
Yeah, because yeah, it's like they do. You're gonna get a completely different idea of what they're asking for in their assignment, or even the piece of literature you're reading than other people will. And like honestly, I'm not really even a big fan of like the hardcore algebra being taught in school because it requires your brain, in my opinion, to work like what I call a computer. Where it's not how my brain like work. My brain will max out. Like it's like I can count change. I mean, I can multiply. You know, I can do all that basic stuff. But once you add in all these symbols and fractions and everything, you've completely in letters. You've completely lost me. There, yeah. I just think that there should be, I think that should be more geared towards someone who wants to be like engineering student or something like that. Someone who wants to learn how to build, not burn, build a bridge or a train or, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
or,
that's very important. You bring up something very important, and that is it's a myth that we're all IT geeks. And as a matter of fact, it's not even a majority of us. A minority of us are IT geeks. However, the IT companies have noticed this group of people, and we see some big companies like Google, Microsoft, Apple, SAP, and so on actively seeking autistic people for their employees. And that's all well and good.
yeah, more
However,
like, yeah.
my
And
question
also,
always is,
yeah, well, you get that in media too, like in Hollywood. Like, I like the show Community, but like the character Abed is supposedly he's on the autism spectrum, even though they don't 100% come out and say it. And while some of the things they go, yeah, I could see that, you know, some of the
yeah,
behaviors he does are like, like it's just like you're just like, yeah, it's not enough fleshing out. Like, even though this is a show that I would not watch because I don't think it's appropriate, there's this show where, you know, this autistic girl says she wants to get wasted. Okay, I can admit I can relate more to that than I can. Sorry, I don't want to get wasted, but I can relate to that more.
right. So you're
Definitely.
getting into the diversity
Yeah.
of the autism spectrum. And I think that's the most thing that we need to keep in mind for us professors is that we are going to be diverse and we are going to ask questions and need supports that may be different from what other students need. However, what I find is that when professors tune into the needs of autistic individuals, then they become better professors overall. And Hank, you got something to say.
Yes, on the topic Shaina raised about clarity, I want to share an anecdote from my own life. And that is when I was in middle and high school, I took Latin as my foreign language. And I remember well, and before I say this, I should say that my Latin teacher from middle school was also my middle school choir director at my church. And so I'm about to say that he did some unteacherly behavior, but it was because he really knew me really well and he knew he could tease me in a fun way. And so I remember one occasion where I did a homework assignment, but it was not at all what he wanted. And he threw it up in the air and said that this is not what I asked you to do. And at first, because autistic people do take things literally, I was tempted to really get mad, but then I realized, wait, I know this guy, I know he loves me, and he, if he's asking me to redo it, I just need to tell him to be clearer about the assignment.
Yeah, that's an important point, Hank. Clarity. I've seen many situations where a professor or a teacher in general will give an assignment and they talk like for 2 or 3 paragraphs worth. There's way too much information.
Yeah.
Whereas all this information could just be provided in bullet point form.
Right.
And maybe just 3 phrases and you're done. So we have to be careful not to be wordy. Thomas, do you have anything to say about helping us professors?
Well, I mean, it's just, I think everybody else has, put it into great perspective, I mean, it's just, again, we're all individuals and stuff, but so I think it's, worthwhile. I mean, if the professor is interested and, if the student is interested, to, take time to, have conversation with them, I mean, get to know them, just as you would any individual, not just, what about their interests are, what their goals are, but, encouraging them to make their goals and encouraging them to work hard for their goals. I mean, and, to take initiative, just, because I think that, speaking for myself, I think us, as those of us on the spectrum, we can have just as much influence as anybody else. I mean, in fact, I think we can have even greater in some ways, we just have to take that initiative. And, I mean, I think it's harder for some of us to do at certain times just because, we just, sometimes we can get overwhelmed a bit with new situations and stuff. But I think that, professors can go a long way in, just fostering that relationship with their students, which encourages them to, step out of their comfort zones, learn more about themselves, because, I mean, I'm always interested in learning more about myself and what skills I have and what things I can do in a new situation. So, yeah, it's just, always encouraging students, venture out.
All right. Yeah, sure. And get to know your students, get to know your autistic students, get to know the rest of your students as individuals as well. Let's take one more question. Let's take a look at the next question. It's right under it. And this question is, what has been the most useful tool or best piece of advice you received when making a new transition? And who wants to take that one? Most helpful piece of advice. Hank, you're on.
Hi, yes, I think when I've made transitions, now I'm going to share something that's specific to a certain group of people and may not work for everyone, but my faith, my religious faith has helped me transitions are obviously a lot harder for us autistic individuals than for the normal person. And so I think my religious faith, I pray a lot when facing hard transitions, and I receive a lot of help that way.
All right. So you find strength through religion. I know many autistic people who find the routines of religion comforting because we tend to like routines, and they find religion very helpful, just like many non-autistic people find religion helpful. And also there are people who are interested in religion and it's not helpful to them. So it's really a matter of what is helpful to the individual.
Right, that's why I said it, it applies to me, but it may not to everyone.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It sounds like, Shaina, you've got something to say.
Yeah, my Christianity is important to me too, yeah.
So it is important to you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so for Shaina, religious is important to her too. And let's go to Thomas. What about you?
Yeah, my faith as well, in that, and also, my values and my skills that, I developed, and, just everything I like doing, I'm proud, for being who I am, so I think it's important, that, I found it throughout my life because, I've had to move several times throughout my life. Some of the schools I've attended, some have been more helpful than others, and some I found more comfort in than others, for various reasons. But, and I haven't always had control over like when I get to make a transition or not. And, but whenever I've had to make a transition, because like when my parents moved around, I've had to, settle into new areas, into new schools and around new people. And, I think that being forced to do that has in some ways, just, made me stronger as an individual, finding about, how to best put my skills and talents to use and how to best to make a good impression on other people. So I always like doing that. Always like, sharing that when given the opportunity. And like I said, I always like taking opportunities, and I always regretted when I haven't taken opportunities and making the most of them. So that's really all I can say. Just I feel that I do good when I'm in a transition. I have to do something, but that doesn't mean I don't ever want to take initiative.
All right.
That's given me good influence to take initiative. Now that I'm an adult, I can do it myself.
Right. So transitions. We all have to go through transitions, little ones during the day, bigger ones, sometimes life transitions, moving from one place to another. And as Thomas suggested, that is where the most interesting things occur. And whether it's a transition from school to work, or from one job to another job, or possibly from having a job to not having a job because of the pandemic, that's when people become the most creative. And similarly in music, music being a highly focused interest of mine, there are parts of musical composition that are called transitions, and they transition from one section to another. And that's where in music we often find the most interesting things that a composer does, is they move from one theme to another. Yep. And that's probably true for, I would say, many other sorts of transitions as well. So we reached the end of our time together. I think we've had a lot of great answers, a lot of great discussion to round out today's conference. And I want to thank Shaina, Thomas, and Hank for your wonderful answers, giving everybody additional insight into what it means to be autistic.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was good to be here.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you came, and it was great having you on the panel. And that goes for everybody, Shaina, Hank, and Thomas.
Hey,
And I now turn it over to Mika.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Shaina, Hank, and Thomas for sharing your perspectives. What a wonderful conclusion to our 2020 Autism Hope Summit.